Honda is a unique motorcycle manufacturer in that you can get, as of right now in 2024, 8 different models from them with 2 wheels and under 200 cc. Let me see if I can name them all off. You got the Grom, you got the Monkey, you got the Navi, you've got the Trail, you've got the Cub, you've got the XR 150, the ADV 160, and the PCX 160. This is the Trail 125, and because there are so many different motorcycles within this kind of small bore class coming from Honda, it really gets specific into why you'd want to go with one certain model over the other. And obviously, choice is usually a good thing for us as consumers. It gives us more options and overall we win. But you do have to really study the differences and think about how you're going to use each individual motorcycle to decide if it's worth getting one over the other. That is the conundrum that I've had spending the last month or so with this Honda Trail 125. It's a motorcycle that I've long been really curious to spend time with because I used to own a Grom. I really loved that bike, and this is very similar to a Grom. It almost promises to be an off-road capable Grom. We've got essentially the same 125cc single-cylinder motor, fuel injected under there. Instead of the 5-speed manual from the Grom, we have a 4-speed semi-automatic transmission. We're going to talk about that more. We've got matching 17-inch tires, front and rear, a little bit of knob action going on there. We've got a side stand, a center stand, a kickstarter, electric start, front wheel ABS standard now for 2024, and a giant rear rack. But some things we don't have are passenger seat accommodations, so it's just you that's going to be riding this bike around. And we've got a top speed that is significantly under 60 miles per hour. And I will say, it's going to be tough to even cruise 55 miles per hour, and that has been one of the biggest cons of mine for this bike. You've also got standard engine skid plate protection under there. We're going to maybe try that out a little bit here today. We've got disc brakes in front and rear, something that differentiates it from something like the XR 150 or the ADV 160. Got an LED headlight, a very faint basic LED gauge. What else? Mirrors, horn, standard motorcycle accoutrement. We've got a 1.4 gallon fuel tank under the seat. We get excellent fuel economy on this one. I haven't yet done some sort of fuel economy test, but we'll get to that here at some point. Oh, and this is kind of unique. The shifter, you can shift normally from right there up and down, or you can use this back part to do upshifting. So you can downshift by pushing down there and upshift by pushing down here. That makes it easier if you got big old unwieldy boots on. Overall, you're coming in at 256 pounds wet and ready to ride, and that has made it very easy to do things like load it up on my rear carrier here on the back of my truck. The lightweight and the low height paired with the automatic transmission, I was able to put my ramp down and simply walk the bike right up. It is the easiest motorcycle I have ever loaded onto my back carrier, and that's one of the main reasons I did want to try the Trail 125, is that I like to come out here and go camping. And because I've got all my camping gear set up in my truck there, I want to have something that I can run around trails or campgrounds or down to the store or something that's on the back. And this Trail 125 has been great for that. However, if I wanted to bring Alyssa, my wife, she wouldn't be able to ride on the back of that, which is a huge con to me. And you can do some sort of modifications. There are passenger pegs that you can get delivered to you that I believe Honda makes for other markets, or at least there's an accessory manufacturer that makes it for other markets. So you can retrofit some sort of seating and peg option there, but it is a shame that Honda doesn't give you at least a factory option to do that from the USA website, or even better, just offer it to us. I don't know. I mean, I get the point of the rear rack, but considering that you can't even do state highway speeds on this bike, I just don't see too many people using it for crazy adventuring trips. So today we're going to go do some off-road trails here at Wildomar ORV Park outside of Temecula, California. We're going to do some street riding as well, talk about some of the reasons you would decide to go to a dealer and drop $5,000 on the Trail 125, and probably some other reasons why I would recommend other models in Honda's lineup. Before I get on the bike, this is a perfect opportunity to show off the Heite Backpack in a different form than I've showed it before. you can see it's very thin right now because I have removed the backpack portion and I'm simply running with the airbag and the little cover. And what's cool about this is I'm going to put my water bladder right here, which is going to give me 3 liters of water, very important on this 90+ degree day. And it's still got a little bit of pocket action so I can toss my phone or maybe a little bit of recovery gear or something like that in the back. And because this is the electronic airbag, or I guess even if it were the manual airbag, once I get onto the street, I can turn the vest on and have it protecting me for street riding. But then when I'm doing more gnarly stuff off-road, I can have it off and simply have the water back there. So definitely a good reason to pick yourself up a Heite Backpack, the H-Move. Check the link below and get yourself a little bit of a discount. Okay, fire it up. I did warm it up a little bit here. Bring it up into first gear, and away we go. Just under a 32-inch seat height, which means most people can ride it. And that being said, it is a fairly wide seat, which is good for comfort. However, it does mean that it is a little bit harder to touch the ground than a bike with a 31-inch seat height would be with a skinnier seat. So let's start off with some dirt trails. Like I said, this is definitely a place where the Trail 125 excels. Fancy that, huh? The trail does well on the trails. A combination of the automatic transmission and the decent enough tires and decent enough ground clearance make it so you could do a good amount of trail without a whole ton of skill. It's fairly easy to put foot down, and I did have one situation last night where the bike almost got away from me, and I was able to put my foot down and catch it. Now, you don't have a ton of suspension travel. We're looking at about 4 inches on average between the front and the rear. It's a decent enough suspension. This is actually pretty soft coming through here, but on the bigger bumps, especially like kind of coming down and then transitioning back to up, there's just not too much for the suspension to do in order to absorb it. And that is where you get into the discussion of the Honda XR150. Despite it being carbureted, no ABS, a little bit of a simpler construction, it is $1,000 cheaper, and it offers you much more suspension travel and a rear seat. So despite it being a little bit heavier, a little bit more expensive, if you're going to be doing this sort of riding regularly, I would skip the trail and do the XR. I mean, I suppose it is a traditional manual transmission as well, but this sort of riding, you're probably just going to be doing first gear, maybe second gear on the XR anyway. Now, I appreciate how they did give the Trail 125 ABS as standard now for 2024, but it's just on the front. And if that still bothers you, it's very easy to disconnect. There's a little connector right up under the headlight. I did it last night just to make sure it was possible. And then you just simply ride around with a small ABS light flashing at you. But you can still lock up the rear, bring yourself to a stop pretty quickly here in the dirt. The outright capability of the Trail 125 is pretty good. There's a pretty steep hill here. Now, I did have a few situations last night where, oh gosh, this is steep. Ugh. I did have a few situations last night where it just didn't have enough power to keep going up the hill, and I don't know if it's a combo of the semi-automatic transmission or what, but I had to get off and kind of walk it up the hill. The XR150L is also going to have a 19-inch front tire, so it's going to do a little bit of a better job getting over larger obstacles out here in the dirt. Oh, that's a steep hill. Do we think we can get up it? I think we're going to need a little momentum. Let's see. Okay, yeah, no problem. Ooh, some sand and another hill. Okay, another thing I was just reminded of, you've got that big rack in the back of the bike, which is great for putting stuff on, I'll admit that. However, there's this big bar that sits right behind the seat, and multiple times I've found myself, even at 5'10", wanting to scoot back in the seat and sit with my arms stretched out, and then if I go over a big bump, my tailbone comes right down and smashes on that metal bar. I'll show you what I'm talking about here later. And that's frustrating, that really is, because that can really hurt. Standing is a bit awkward on the Trail 125 as well. You've got this frame that kind of sticks out, as well as the exhaust that sticks out on the right side, and when you go to stand, the back of your calves hit the frame of the motorcycle, and so you can't fully stand up. Not only that, the handlebars are so low that you can't stand up really well on it either. So if you're going to be doing a little bit more hardcore off-roading, hitting big bumps and wanting to stand and make up for that lack of suspension travel, that's not going to be very easy to do either. Ooh, that's a fun looking hill. Let's give that a try. Ooh, almost lost it there. Now last night I did drop the tire pressures down to about 20 psi front and rear, and it took everything pretty well, but today, since I was going to be doing a little bit larger variety of riding, oh, this is going to be tough. Oh, it did it! It just barely did it. Woo! Anyway, since I was going to be doing a little bit bigger variety of riding today, I put the tire pressures back up to their placard. I think it's 25 front, 32 rear. All right. So again, being able to just put my foot down and kind of walk the bike, stabilize it down, big help, big help. Oh, I'm getting more rear end washout today than yesterday, and I think that's because I pumped the tire pressure back up. And once you get into a rhythm with the trail, you can really have some fun with it. I mean, it's got a decent little bit of torque, and first gear is long enough that you don't really have to worry about shifting out of it at all, and dirt stuff like this. A little bit of faster section of trail. I haven't had ground clearance be an issue once riding around here. I think the shorter wheelbase helps with that. Woo! Oh, almost got thrown off with that sand, but again, able to throw the leg down, that helps. If you're a more novice rider, having this automatic transmission is definitely going to allow you to enjoy this type of riding more. I mean, you can focus more on learning how to control the bike in low traction situations, and arguably more importantly, you can just be going out and having fun. I mean, don't get so caught up trying to pick out a bike or with the motorcycle itself to ignore the fact that you should just be going out and having a fun time riding. If the Trail 125 is your best route to go out and have adventures and explore and have fun, then get a Trail 125. It might be the best tool for you. Just remember that you could buy other things from Honda, save $1,000, and then use that toward camping builds. All right, so done with the off-road trails. Let's get out onto some kind of adventure road, if you will, some fire roads. Shifting on the Trail 125 takes some getting used to, and I can fully understand how back in the 70s or so, when this kind of the grandfather of this bike first came out, how a semi-automatic transmission like this would have been revolutionary. It would have been so much better than having a manual. However, these days CVT transmissions have come so far that I do think that would be a better option for this bike than this semi-auto. In order to shift, you kind of have to push in the shifter. That's sort of equivalent to pushing in the clutch. And then if you're downshifting, you got a rev match so that you don't get a little bit of perk and jerk, and then release the shifter. And it took me a little while to kind of figure that out. In fact, I took some counsel from other YouTube videos on how to properly shift and ride this. You'd think it would sort of explain that in the owner's manual, but it doesn't. But oh, this type of riding is right where the Trail 125 is meant to be. Slower roads, kind of sub 40 miles per hour. What am I doing right now? I can barely see this gauge cluster. I don't understand why they took such a cheap gauge cluster. I need to see if the brightness is down on this or something, but I remember that from the last Trail 125 I rode as well. I could hardly see the speedo, but we're doing 33 right now. Third gear. And this is probably the fastest I've ever done this road, and that includes on a V-Strom and, oh, what's the other bike? A Kawasaki Z400. This bike just, you can throw it around so easy that you can go so quick. Now I know a lot of people put money into these when they purchase them doing modifications, because you could see right there going up that slight incline in third gear, I was not exactly accelerating. So if you load this thing up with camping gear and a heavier rider, I mean, I'm only 165 pounds, you're going to have a tough time if you're at any sort of elevation, or if you're trying to get up steeper hills. I mean, you're just really going to be going slow. So I know most people who purchase these and build them out open up the motor a little bit, get a little bit more airflow, and even if you can uncork an extra horsepower from this thing, it's going to be a significant difference, especially from a percentage standpoint. Only a 1.4 gallon fuel tank on here, so compared to the other Honda adventure motorcycles, you're a little bit less. If we go back to that XR150, I think you're dealing with about 2.8 gallons, which is a lot of fuel for that bike. And another thing to consider, that's another reason it weighs a good bit more, is because Honda's weighing an extra 1.4 gallons of fuel on it. So that's maybe 10 pounds or so difference. It's just fuel. But no doubt this is going to be a very fuel efficient bike, especially because you're so speed limited by the power figure. But if you're going to go out and do a whole day of adventure riding, you might want to have a little bit of extra fuel. So then, are you putting a roto packs on the back or something and then giving yourself more weight to lug around? Once you do get the shifting down and you figure out how to clutch in and rev match and downshift and everything, it's fun, it's cool, but it's something that doesn't seem to align with the otherwise very beginner-friendly nature of the Trail 125. Presumably, you're marketing this towards someone who's not super familiar with traditional motorcycling, so rev match downshifting is not going to be something that they're very interested in taking on in the first place. On the topic of transmission, if this bike is marketed toward more novice riders, give us a gear indicator on the dash. I know you can barely see the dash in this bright sunlight, but if I'm coming up to a stop and I have no way of knowing what gear I'm in, then I'll end up kind of downshifting, and then all of a sudden I'm in neutral. It's like, all right, well, then I gotta upshift again. And on a motorcycle where there's a more clear tachometer and you don't have a little bit of the slurring of the automatic transmission, you can be a little bit more familiar with what... Oh yeah, there's no tachometer on this at all. Okay. So you pretty much only have sound to go off of to know which gear you're in. So it would be nice to have some sort of indicator, so when I'm coming up to a stop, I know, okay, I'm in third, I got to downshift twice in order to get to first. It's also a little different on a traditional manual bike, because if you're coming to a stop, you need to be in first, you can just bang, 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 bang down and get to first. You have to go through neutral, get down to first, and then that's where you need to be. In this bike, if you bang, 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 bang down, you're going to get into neutral, and then you got to go back up one. I know it sounds subtle, but it's just kind of annoying. I do have to say, the peg ground clearance is very impressive. I've been zooming around these corners, and I can dip the bike way over. And in fact, I think throughout all of my testing, even higher speed, kind of running trail, I mean, look at that. My foot barely hit, and that's because I had it hanging way off the peg, but I haven't had any issues with peg scrapage on this bike, which is kind of cool because being a lower horsepower motorcycle, you're going to want to carry speed as much as you can through the corners, and it's nice that you can lay this thing way over. Never know what you're going to find when you're out on an adventure. And now we get into the other aspect of adventure riding, is covering distance. And that's where the Trail 125 starts to fall short a little bit again. Some of my frustrations of having this bike around as a daily rider around town is that there's no storage on it, and it's difficult to keep up with traffic at 55 mile an hour. And by 55, I mean 55 mile an hour speed limit roads, which means I need to comfortably go 60 in order to stay out of traffic's way. Accelerating up to about 40 or so is not too big of a deal, but after that, let's see, we're getting up to an indicated 48, 47, 46, so we're falling behind a little bit because of wind and elevation, or I should say incline. So here we go. I mean, we're having trouble keeping about 45 miles per hour, and that's just going to eat up your adventure time. If you're truly using this bike locally around property or solely trails, maybe you're up in the mountains and you're spending all day just on fire roads, then that's cool. The trail's gonna do really well for that. But here today in 2024, there's so many motorcycles that will do as many things as the trail will do, and then also be able to go comfortably 60 miles per hour, or at least 55. And you can stay within Honda's lineup. You can get the ADV 160, you can get the XR 150L, you could even spend a few grand more and get yourself into the $300 or $300 rally, and then you've got a full-fledged motorcycle that doesn't weigh all that much more than this and is so much more capable. Honda even has the low version of that bike now. Or alternatively, if you're only going to do light riding kind of fire roads like that and stuff, you're not going to be doing anything like the first part of this video with the ADV trails, then just get yourself a Grom. You're going to spend less money, you're going to be able to take a passenger, it weighs a little bit less if I remember correctly, and it'll go faster. So you can get a Grom and throw some knobbier tires on there, or you could spend a lot of money and get a Monkey and have the knobbier tires already on there. So it's not to say that the Trail 125 doesn't have merits above and beyond any other bike in Honda's lineup. I mean, to get a Kickstarter and a center stand and a 260-pound weight limit and the big cargo rack and everything, there are a lot of benefits to the Trail 125. I don't want you to think that I don't recognize that. I'm just also pointing out that for walking out of a dealer about $5,000, at least marketed price $4,500, there are other options that you can choose that might suit your needs better. But I'm going to spend the rest of the day here putzing around on the 125. We're doing some exploring of some pretty cool roads up here, San Diego County. Oh, yeah, that's kind of rough. Just not dealing with much suspension travel there. And I'll wrap up my thoughts with you at the end of the day. All right, wrapped up a nice hearty day of riding and exploring here on the Trail 125. And I don't want you all to get the idea that I don't like and appreciate this bike from this review. My main rub and takeaway for all of you is just that I want you to make sure you know what you're getting into and you know what your other options are. And part of that, like I said at the beginning of this video, is Honda's own fault. Honda will give you plenty of other ways to motivate yourself with a single-cylinder motor for under $5,000, $6,000 or so, and to be able to go off-road and to have fun doing it. What the Trail 125 makes me think of is those large Sprinter vans that people buy for overlanding. They spend $80,000 to $100,000 on this fully kitted out machine that, yes, could be done with something quite a lot simpler and cheaper, but some people know exactly what they want, or at least think they know exactly what they want, and they go out and spend the money to get exactly that purpose-built machine. And that's what the Trail 125 is. It's a purpose-built machine. If you've got some property, if you've got kids you want to run around on it, if you want to be able to putz around town and have a big cargo thing on the back perhaps, or if you want to be able to throw it on the back of a camper and take it around, by all means, this is a good bike for it. It's easy to ride. It's got its quirks, like this little bar back here that I was telling you guys about earlier, that my tailbone did come down and hit throughout the day and I did get frustrated by. But it's got a lot to like about it, and it's easy. It very much is. But at $5,000, there are other ways I would spend my money, just depending on exactly what I needed. And admittedly, some of that would be on the used market. So if you want to get something with a warranty, with dealer support, that looks cool, is easy to ride, and is very capable in a lot of different scenarios, the Trail 125 does do a pretty darn good job at that. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the T125, check the link below. Like I said, I'm probably going to devise some sort of fuel economy test for this, even though it can't do highway running like our DM commuter fuel economy test usually includes. And we've got our no talking winding road ride as well. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, ride on.